Hey y'all, hope you're doing good today. So in today's video I want to do part 2 of the balanced Gemini. So I had some more insights come to me and I was pretty excited about them. So I'm going to be sharing that today and I hope you enjoy the message. So in my gosh, what do you call it? Your main picture or your on YouTube, I guess it might be your thumbnail, whatever it is, that front image, right, for your video last time, I used this card, okay? And this is from a set that you can get along with this book, and it's really cool. I'm going to share it with you. And it's called Urania's Mirror, A View of the Heavens, right? So it comes with 32 cards, which is really interesting. And it originally came out, I believe, in 1832, and so this is a republication, but it's pretty cool. And so in the introduction, I love to read how people used to communicate back in the 1800s. It's pretty different than today, but yeah, let me just share the end of the introduction with you all, because they're talking about the original author. The original author, I'm not sure. I'll drop it in the description if I can find it. I've seen a couple of different things. So this is, again, a republication, I believe, by Barnes & Noble. But yes, so the end of the introduction is really cool. So they're talking about fixed stars or suns and planets. And it talks about how the former shine by their own inherent light, but the latter are dark, opaque bodies. And then it just explains a little bit more about the workings of the heavens, right? And then it says, hence we find ourselves surrounded by thousands and thousands of suns, multiplied without end, and ranged all around us, at immense distances from each other, attended by 10,000 times 10,000 worlds, all in rapid motion, yet calm, regular, and harmonious, invariably keeping the paths prescribed them. Reasoning by analogy, we are authorized in concluding that these worlds are peopled with myriads of intelligent beings, formed for endless progression toward perfection and felicity. What a sublime idea of the works of the Creator does this suggest to the human imagination. How wonderful the power, wisdom, goodness, and magnificence displayed in the formation and government of so vast a scale of creation, which is extended through the boundless regions of universal space, an extent incomprehensible to all but the infinite mind, and of which it has been aptly said, its center is everywhere, but its circumference nowhere. So I thought that was just kind of neat. And then it goes into a listing of the constellations. It breaks it down between the northern constellations, the zodiac constellations, and the southern constellations. And then you have the cards, right? And then it goes into an explanation of each one of the cards, what they call the astronomical cards, which is really cool. So I want to share with you what is said about Gemini, which is on plate 18 if you purchase this set, which is really cool. And by the way, it actually has, I don't know if you can see these little dots on the back. They're like a little what do you call it, like perforated sort of little markings where the stars are, and you can actually take a little pin and poke them out really easily and then hold it up to, you know, like a lamp. So you have, it's nighttime, you have all the lights turned off in your house, and you just want to put it up against a light, and then you can see what the constellation looks like, so you'll be familiar with it. And the point is to make yourself familiar, and also so that you can identify, you know, where it is and locate it. And it actually goes into detail here in the book about where to locate each one of these, which is cool. So it says Gemini, the twins, a northern sign of the zodiac, extending from 86 degrees to 115 degrees on the equator, and between 12 degrees and 35 degrees on the meridian, consisting of 85 stars. So if you're someone who is into numbers, that might be something fun to research, you know, any kind of symbolism regarding 85. And then it says VIZ. I'm guessing that means visible. So the visible stars, I guess by the naked eye, would be Castor. And then it says, or Apollo. So apparently another name for Castor. Castor is, when I did just a little bit more digging, Castor is the Latin name for Apollo. Apollo is the Greek, but they're essentially the same, right, in mythology. So we have Castor, which is Latin. You have Apollo, which is Greek. Okay, and then also visible would be Pollux, right, which is the Latin name for the Greek Hercules. And I thought that was really cool. And looking into that, because I think a lot of us are more familiar with, we've heard of the names Apollo and Hercules probably a little bit more often than Castor and Pollux. But apparently Apollo and Hercules were two of the Argonauts that were a part of the ship called the Argo, right? Jason, right? They were part of that group. Okay, and so I think their mission was to find the golden fleece. So just something, a little rabbit hole if you want to do some more digging and research, kind of interesting, the story there. And so it goes on to explain in detail in this book about the location and the degrees and how this constellation ascends and exactly where, you know, like in the northeast, when you can see it in the evening, during which months, and it's just really cool. I really recommend that you purchase this if you have interest. So I'll just leave it at that. But I do want to share that it explains that, yeah, that between Castor and Pollux, immortality was alternately shared, which was kind of interesting, and we'll revisit that in a minute. And also it says that the symbol, which is like the Roman numeral 2, is indicative of union, which we mentioned before. So let's just talk a little bit further. So, you know, logically, when you're thinking about the concept of union, it's like there has to be an other, right, for there to be a coming together and a union, which is why, to me, this is a big difference in spiritual concepts when you think about, this is why I like paradox, just quick side note, but when you think about, you know, how you would define God and what God means to you, is it more of an energy and a thing, or a person, you know, which is relatable? And then you have the concept or the spiritual philosophies and different belief systems that look at our relationship to God as being kind of already all together and all in one, right? Which sort of, depending on your mindset, and this is a really critical factor here, right? Depending on your perspective, literally, and your mindset, and your paradigms, this may steer a person away from the concept of union, because there is no concept of an other, just the concept of everything already being connected, and there is no other. So this is important to me through my lens, and here's why. If you've been through some hard stuff in life, and you're walking that path, and I don't want to get into detail on that, what all that means, because if you've been there and you've done it, or you're in it, you know what I'm talking about. I don't have to elaborate. Even though what we've gone through may be different, the process of being traumatized and healing and all this stuff is kind of similar, right, to some degree. And so you can wind up feeling very uncertain, especially if you've been gaslit and lied to and manipulated and all this, your mind's been messed with. You can get to a place of feeling like you don't really know what's what, and you feel alone and all this. And this concept of union can actually, in my opinion, be life-saving. And so when you think about the prerequisites for union, I think that this distinction is important here, and how we perceive our part in relation to God, and how you define God, right? And I don't personally believe that it's either or, a separate being, or there is no separation, we're all connected. I actually think that there's a paradox here. This is just my belief as far as the greater truths, right? Because to me, in the Bible, it talks about the Holy Spirit, connecting all of us, and we make up the body of Christ, right? And yet, it's like we get to be part of God, and yet God is presented in the Christian Bible as Father, right? So it's a both and in Christianity through my lens. And so, which is cool, because through the lens of healing, it's beneficial, because on one hand, when you think about the Father, you don't feel alone. You feel loved. You feel supported. You feel like you have a guide and a helper and a friend and all this, right? And a relationship that you can invest in. And it goes both ways, and it's wonderful and beautiful and fulfilling and all this, right? And then on the other hand, if you feel like you are in fact connected via the Holy Spirit, and that's your lens, and you're viewing all of us in the Spirit as connected to one another and to God, then there's this union, which is empowering. It's very supportive and empowering. So the concept of union, when we're thinking about that quality within a Gemini, right, is a really powerful thing, I would say, with regards to healing, especially. And I feel like all of us have to, heal from various stuff, throughout different stages in our life. So I think it applies to, just about anybody, right? So, I don't even know if I need my notes anymore. I didn't even look at them. I have notes today. And also, it's really interesting, the Bible says, where two or more are gathered, there I am also, right? I believe this was a quote from Jesus. And so, I think that goes right along with what we're talking about. But essentially, this whole concept of the twins, the symbolism for Gemini, and so you have twins, which are complementary, which are supportive, which are reflective. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, how there's a little bit of a difference, but they're complementary, and so as such, they are supportive and create this union and relationship and sense of wholeness, right? So this sense of wholeness, which is a result of union, right? Either internally within oneself, which we're going to talk about, or externally, like in a marriage with a person or whatnot, right? A sense of wholeness is always good. It's always good when it's healthy and it's right? So that's a great concept to focus on with regards to wanting to heal yourself, right? Or to help others heal too. And I say that because, in the world of psychology, injury to the psyche is associated with fragmentation, with a splitting apart. So it makes sense logically, right? We can kind of, work backwards and deduce that, okay, well, if a mind is fragmented, then union and wholeness would be very conducive to healing, right? Okay. And because of that, I think that just the natural qualities for a Gemini are supportive of that. So maybe a good life purpose for a Gemini would be someone like a healer, someone who helps others to heal from their traumas, you know? Just a thought. But the main element seems to be, across different books in my research, as far as this sun sign of Gemini, is adaptability, right? Adaptability, flexibility, being fluid, having multiple aspects of oneself, right? And again, that can be good or bad. So, and it seems to be due to an active mind, which brings in the quality of air, what they call, an air quality, which is metaphorical here. So there's lots of cerebral activity, which is why I feel like Gemini they seem to be, have just a really active mind, always, got a lot of different projects going at once, or, things like that. So, just a side note here, I think that if you are not a Gemini and you have a Gemini in your life and you're observing them, it's possible that you may, from the outside, view their quality of being fluid and very, having such an active mind and, have a lot going on, that could be misperceived and viewed incorrectly as, a lifestyle of distractions. Like, well, they can't even complete a project or whatever. And that might lead someone to make an assumption about a Gemini that there's unhealed trauma, when in fact it's just kind of who they are. They just have a lot going on at once, and that's the way they like it. Because there is such a need, just an innate need per design, right? The personality for mental stimulation, right? So just, side note. And so I wrote, but maybe this adaptability, due to their multifaceted nature, kind of gifts them with the tendency to be more whole than the other signs, like multiple people in one, but not in a fragmented or a wolf in sheep's clothing way, but more in a jack of all trades way. That's what I would say. Geminis can be naturally more independent than others, I would say, and I'll give you a comparison, right? So when I say more independent, it would be like in comparison to, like, say, a Cancer sign, right? Which is a water sign, the Cancer zodiac, right? So that's a water sign represented by a crab, and they are generally thought of as being more prone to the spiritual, the feeling side of things, and sensitivity. And as being a water sign, having a reflective nature, which is kind of like the twins in Gemini, but I would say it's a tendency to kind of not internalize it, but externalize it. It's like, because if you think about water, in the mirror effect, you have an outside part or piece, right? So I feel like I haven't really dove deep yet into researching Cancer. That's coming up next. But so far, I'm really kind of leaning into the water symbolism and seeing it as the Gemini qualities a little bit, but it being one where they may be more prone to desire a relationship with an actual other person, kind of like designed for union with another, right? Whereas with a Gemini, it could maybe they could be more independent and be totally happy their whole life, just single, or if they do choose marriage, if that's a free will choice, then they may just still have more of an independent nature, whereas a Cancer, a water sign, may just be more into and place more emphasis on relationships, so we'll look into that a little bit more when we get there. But just wanted to highlight that difference, how union can be internal or external, right? So this brings up an important question as I was writing down my notes on all this. And that is this. Could we be, and I would encourage you to catch yourself and just kind of think about it, if you think to do so, could we be misperceiving our natural qualities per the grand design as wrong or something that needs to be fixed, when maybe it's just we're just kind of different in that way, you know, in all these different ways? You know, what makes us unique? Do we really need to fix that? Is it really bad? Again, I would just, you know, hold up the mirror of the spectrum, kind of like a test, and say, okay, here's a healthy side of this quality and here's an unhealthy side. Where do I fall? Or where does this person I'm, you know, involved with fall, you know? But the quality itself, to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, to just totally dismiss the entire quality of a person as bad or wrong, just because it's not like you, because again, we're all unique. That's what we're highlighting in this series. I don't think that's a good thing, you know? I think we do need to evaluate it and remember that scale, that spectrum, for the evaluation process. So just a thought. And I wanted to share a quote that came to mind from my teaching days when I was considering this. And it's from Albert Einstein. It says, everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And I think that's very, very fitting here. So just something to consider, you know. This also goes right along with the concepts of resistance and non-resistance. You know, are there areas of who you are and your own tendencies that you're resisting because you have this incorrect belief that they're wrong or bad? Maybe they're not in their essence, at their core. Maybe it's just out of alignment, out of balance. Maybe these qualities of yours, maybe you are subconsciously trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you're constantly living a life of struggle and resistance because you're trying to be something you're not. It's just something to think about. So back to Gemini, right? Being fluid or adaptable. So again, when you have that quality, you can kind of, you're so flexible, really, just in your traits and just innate characteristics. You can kind of feel all the roles yourself. I feel like a Gemini would be more prone to not necessarily needing a partnership, you know, externally, unless they just choose that, which is a quality of wholeness and independence. And the good news here to me is that it means that they have a natural propensity, I think is the right word, or natural ability for healing, you know, oneself and others, right? I still think that you can have these natural gifts but be unaware of them, and maybe they're out of balance or they're not refined. But I just wanted to draw that to your attention. If you are a Gemini you're watching, or you know someone and maybe they haven't tapped into that potential that's just sitting there, you know, that's part of their design. Yeah, so there's not, I feel like, with Geminis, there's not so much a dependency, or not as much dependency on others in the healing process for helpful input or support, which means the Gemini might bounce back quicker from hard times, you know, possibly. But on the other end, see, because again, they're very intellectual, they're thinkers, right? On the other end, a Gemini might actually hold up and block and slow down their healing process due to their tendency to be in their mind a lot. So the negative side of the spectrum is you may actually wind up ruminating. So it's just trying to fine-tune these qualities that are unique to you, right? Because they can go either way. And I have a couple of new books. I'll put the titles down in the description, but One of my books I bought describes Gemini as, or the air quality of a Gemini as being intellectual, dynamic, and articulate. And I would say, as far as being articulate, it doesn't have to be with language specifically. It can be, but it could mean with your mind. In other words, being very detail oriented. So sometimes you have to kind of look at these qualities in a multifaceted way, a fractal type way. What are all the pieces and parts that can make up this quality for it to resonate with you and therefore have meaning and be useful, you know, in your life for growth and change. Air quality is also associated with freedom, right? And then going back to this book I shared with you all earlier, you know, one of the twins has a club. And then I believe that is Hercules, right? Because he's known as the god of, little g god, of strength and heroes, right? And he's known for fighting monsters in the myths, okay? And then we have Apollo, which has the bow and arrow, because he's the god of archery, right? In the myths. And also he represents healing. Now what's interesting and what I want to point out here is that you have on one side, one twin, you have the club, which is for battling in close proximity. And so he also has this quality of strength, and I think that would be important. Because if you let, you know, on the battlefield, you let an enemy right up close on you, well, you're very vulnerable. You know, if you miss with that club, you've got to be able to fight. You also need the strength too, to move the club. So it's that's just one aspect, right, of a Gemini. It's this, and if you think about it, if you've been, I think a lot of times our qualities, we don't even know we have certain qualities until we are presented with extreme circumstances or events in our life, and that makes certain qualities come out in us so that we can know thyself even deeper and grow from it. You see what I'm saying? Like, oh, I didn't even know I had that in me. You've heard people say that. You know, where'd that come from? So if you think about maybe you've been kind of, you know, just blessed in life and you hadn't really had a lot of things go wrong or whatever, and then all of a sudden there's some big issues right in your face, it can bring out this spirit, this fighting spirit. You can come across to people as very strong in spirit, in a battle ready kind of way, like you're swinging your club metaphorically. And it's because, you know, it's there, that essence, that quality within a Gemini is there for protection, you know? So it doesn't have to be demonized. And then this other aspect over here, Apollo, which is the god of archery. Well, if you think about a bow and arrow, that's to battle afar, right? And so you're covering both bases, the close proximity battle and the battle afar out there in the world. And what's interesting is Apollo, who has the bow and arrow, right, who is battling afar, the qualities associated with him, with that twin, are more feminine. They are more of a feminine nature energetically, such as music and dance and poetry. So I think this is really important because it's a great example of balance. I talk about balance all the time on my channel, and this particular zodiac sign of Gemini is just perfectly embodies that. So if you think about it, if you are threatened literally in real life, if it's right there on, you know, in front of you, like think about a dog. You know, if there's a threat that comes right up on it, it's going to bite, probably, right? I'm thinking about, you know, the club aspect with is it Pollux? Yeah, I think, yeah, or Hercules. And then, but yeah, if you sense the battle out there, it's still around you, but it's not right up on you. Sometimes you can use your intellect, which Geminis have that strength, to battle. Right? It's just like the Bible verse that says we battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. So you can use things like poetry and art and music to fight the battle when it's out there. You have that luxury. You see what I'm saying? With your intellect. You can, that's I think, presented a lot of times through the concept of, I think there's even a book called The Art of War or something like that. So it's here, it's mental, right? I'm sorry, y'all, I'm so hot. I'm like trying to turn on my fan, my AC fan in here, and without it messing up the sound. It's so hot out here in my Jeep. It was fine when I started the video, but it's getting really hot now. Hopefully you can still hear me. So these aspects are all complementary. I'm just trying to highlight this aspect of wholeness within a Gemini. So what's also interesting is it's said that immortality was shared between the twins, alternating between them. Some articles I found said that it alternated between them, and then others said that it was shared between them, but that they alternated their time. Their time was split between Mount Olympus and Hades. So it's like part of their time was to live with the gods, so that would be the alternating immortality, and then they would spend part of their time dwelling among the dead, right, in the underworld or Hades. So that's just something, if you want to take and run with it and look into the symbolism and try to find more meaning there, and life lessons there, I'm sure it's just there waiting for you. So but let me just sum up by saying this. My conclusion is, purpose is a good thing in life, and there's all kind of actual literal studies in this world that show that people who have a purpose, they live for a reason, for a purpose every day, they live longer, they're healthier, they're happier. So I think purpose, again, is just a really good thing. But the possible, or a possible life purpose of a Gemini, I would say, would be to be a teacher or a guide for others. Because, and here's why I say that, because at some point, and I think it does take life lessons, we're not just born, handling, or what's it called, stewarding, being a good steward of our gifts from God, but what if these qualities that are unique to all the different sun signs, what if these qualities are actually our gifts from the Creator that we haven't yet fully identified and embraced and refined? I think it takes all that identification, and then to accept it or embrace it, and then furthermore to refine it. And I think that takes a lifetime, but if you can get there at a good age, when you're still healthy and able to do something with your life, right? I think that it's just good. It's just good to live with purpose. But that's just something to consider. If you're a Gemini and you're watching this, how does that hit you? How does that resonate? Does it resonate? That maybe you may be designed for that kind of a calling, to be of assistance, to others, because you have that strength within you, and that wholeness, and that adaptability within you, right? And so, yeah, and the reason I say that is this, that the immortality in the story of Hercules and Apollo alternating between life and death, essentially, in the story from Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, right, which is symbolic of, what we go through in life. There's a threshold. There's a threshold that's crossed, and it's a threshold between unconsciousness and consciousness, or life and death. And so, which again, life and death is represented in the Christian Bible metaphorically too, right? Where Jesus is talking about let the dead bury the dead. So there's something to this. So if you think about this threshold, okay, and people are going through their life and they're confused and they're hurting and they've been abused and they're just all this stuff that we go through. At some point, people are going to reach a threshold. And this may be a threshold of coming into an awareness or an awakening, or it could be a threshold of leaving a traumatic past behind and trying to step into a good future. If you're the one who is flexible and you've had enough life experience too, and you have refined these gifts and aspects and qualities of yourself, then you may be in the myths and fairy tales and folklore, the embodiment, you may be able to embody those spirit guides, those helpers that are in the story, that kind of are usually met at the threshold, or that journey along the path with people and help them along and over the threshold, you know. And sometimes there's a dance there. It's a little bit back and forth as a person's trying to figure things out, and maybe you're just kind of there dancing with them, and it's a beautiful thing. So it's just something to think about. You could be a blessing to others in that manner at the crossroads, at the threshold, as people are going through big life transitions. So I hope this has been interesting for you, something a little bit different. And I'm gonna do a presentation on Cancer next, that sun sign, and I hope you enjoy that too. And I just hope that you have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you again very soon.